Hi everyone, and thank you so much for watching my channel The Witty Turtle. In today's video we are going to understand section 43CB and section 43D. So first, coming to section 43CB, which speaks about computation of income from construction or service contracts, right? So in this case we are talking about the PGBP income which is arising from any kind of construction contract or contract for providing services, or we generally call it service contracts, right? Construction contract or contract for providing services. So in this case, the PGBP income arising from these two contracts shall be determined based on POCM method. That is your percentage of completion method. What is percentage of completion? Uh, During our intermediate days in cost accounting, we all have studied contract costing, right? So there we used to calculate what is the percentage of work certified and completion of work, right? So that very similar approach is applied here, right? So any kind of PGBP income arising from these two contracts shall be determined based on the percentage of completion method, and along with that you also have to follow ICDS, which is notified under section 145. What is ICDS? That is your income closure and income computation and disclosure standard, right? ICDS, we have studied this a little bit in our intermediate, and in final we have studied it in a elaborate manner. So now what we studied, that PGBP income arising out of these two contracts shall be determined based on POCM method, that is percentage of completion method, along with the provisions in ICDS, which is notified under section 145, right? But here it says that the PGBP shall be calculated in the manner I told you just now. But in the cases where the contract is of a duration of 90 days or less, so in that case, PGBP shall be determined on the basis of percentage of completion method. If the contract is of duration of less than 90 days or 90 days, basically in the legal language we call it the contract whose duration does not exceed 90 days, right? So in that case what happens, the PGBP shall be determined on the basis of percentage of completion method, right? So in this case what happens, whatever revenue you're getting from the contract, whatever revenue you're getting from the contract shall be recognized in that previous year in which the contract will be completed. It doesn't matter when the work started or anything, but the date or the previous year in which the contract has been completed, on in that previous year itself the PGBP shall be recognized, the PGBP income shall be recognized, or the revenue shall be recognized, right? Now the second point says that there are certain contracts which contains indeterminate number of acts, means more than one acts or a series of acts, right? So in that case, you have to complete all those number of acts within a specified period of time, right? So in that case the revenue shall be recognized in SLM method. For example, they are paying you 3 crore rupees for the work to be done over 3 years, right? So it will be recognized in straight line method. So what is the meaning of straight line? Jitna hai divided by jitne years hai, right? So 3 crores divided by 3 years, so 1 crore every year will be recognized. I hope this is clear. Now, another small point that we need to understand is that for calculation of straight line method or project completion method or percentage of completion method, two things you need to consider. The first thing is that contract revenue, we are talking about contract revenue, shall also include the retention money. Now, if you go back to intermediate cost accounting, then we know that while preparing the contract account, we used to keep some retention money. For example, the contract revenue is 1 crore rupees, then the retention money is, for example, 20%, right? So in that case, 80 lakhs are paid, but 20 lakhs are kept with the contractee, right? It is not paid immediately. So that amount is known as retention money. So it is saying that when you are calculating your PGBP income via POCM method or a project completion method or your SLM method, so in that case you will also have to consider the retention money. Why? Because obviously it is a part of the revenue. The only thing is that it is not yet realized, but still you have to consider your retention money. The second point talks about contract cost. The first point was regarding contract revenue. The second point is regarding contract cost. So it says that contract cost shall not be reduced by any incidental income. Incidental income in nature of interest or dividend or any kind of capital gain. Right? What is the meaning of incidental income? It means that it is not a part of your principal source of income, but along with your principal source of income, साइड से थोड़ा बहुत कुछ income आ रहा है. Some pitting incomes are coming in. So all those incomes are known as incidental income, right? So if it is in the nature of interest or dividend or capital gain or any other incidental income, then we are not going to take it into consideration. That will not be included in your contract cost. Like for example, your contract cost was 1 crore rupees, right? And you got some incidental income of 20 lakhs. So in this case you have to take your contract cost as 1 crore. You cannot reduce this 20 lakhs from your 1 crore rupees. So this entire section is speaking about that only when you are calculating the PGBP income, where any kind of construction contract or contract for providing services are there. So in this case, what happens? Generally, POCM method along with ICDS is followed, and when the duration of the contract is 90 days or less than 90 days, so in that case, what happens? POCM method is followed. That means revenue shall be recognized in that previous year in which the contract is completed, right? And the second point says that in the cases where indeterminate number of acts are there, or more than one, you can say more than one acts are there, so in that case you have to follow SLM method, because it has to be done in a during a specified period. So obviously in that case SLM method will be followed. And the last point says while calculating POCM, you have to you have to consider the retention money while calculating the your contract revenue. And while calculating contract cost, you are not supposed to take into consideration any kind of incidental income, right? I hope this is clear. Now coming to the next section, which is your section 43D. So this particular section speaks about interest income on bad and doubtful debts. So even though in this section nowhere it is mentioned that it is talking about NPAs or non-performing assets, but yes, this particular section is basically talking about NPAs only, right? So the first thing is that whatever provisions you have studied in the Income Tax Act, this particular section, section 43D, overrides all the other sections, right? Whatever it is written in income tax, it doesn't matter. But this particular section is, if it is applicable, then only the provisions of this particular section will be applicable, right? Now coming to who are the eligible SSCs here, we will divide the eligible SSCs into two parts. The first part is that any kind of public company who are providing long term finance, or you can say long term debt or long term loan for the purpose of construction or purchase of house, right? In one phrase, we can say any public company who is providing loan for housing, who is providing housing loans, right? So, in that case, that means in the cases of these public companies, the income by way of interest in relation to any specified categories of bad and doubtful debts prescribed by your National Housing Bank. Yeah, it is National Housing Bank. So, it is basically talking about loan or the debt which has become non performing assets, right? But you are supposed to get some amount of interest from that, right? We have already studied this, that when a asset becomes NPA, so the interest recognition stops immediately, right? It stops immediately. But in case of public company, whatever interest income in relation to your NPA or any bad and doubtful debts which is prescribed by a National Housing Bank, So in that case, what will be the method of taxation and when it will be taxable, that we will understand. And when we are talking about eligible SSC, the first point was regarding public company. Now coming to the second point. The second point has a number of banks or number of financial institutions which you need to remember. And remembering them is very easy. The first is any kind of public financial institution or PFIs, state financial corporations, SFCs, SIICs, state industrial investment corporations. The fourth point is about scheduled banks, and the last point is about deposit taking NBFCs, that is your non banking financial corporations who are accepting deposits, right? And the last point is it is that it is very important that non deposit taking NBFCs are also included here, right? So basically we can say that any kind of PFI, SFC, SIIC, or scheduled banks, or any kind of NBFCs. So in this case also, if they are having their income by way of interest in relation to any specified category of bad and doubtful debts as prescribed by RBI, as prescribed by RBI. So in this case, what is the difference between these two kinds of eligible SSCs? When we are talking about the public company, so in that case, the rule has to be prescribed by the National Housing Bank, because the public company is providing long-term finance for construction and purchase of house, right? So it will be governed by National Housing Bank. But when we are talking about all these financial institutions like PFI, SFC, etc., etc., so in this case, all the rules will be prescribed by Reserve Bank of India or RBI, right? So that was all about the eligible SSCs. Now coming to the previous year in which this income will be taxable. So these income shall be taxable in the previous year in which it is actually received, or in the previous year in which it is credited to the PNL of the SSC, in which year it was uh, like either it was actually received or it was credited in the PNL, right? So whichever is earlier, that year, in that year it will be taxable. These income, interest income will be taxable, right? uh, like remembering this is very easy, because we know that in India taxability arises from two things: if it is received in India and if it is accrued in India, right? So here also the income shall be taxable in the previous year in which it is actually received, or in the previous year in which it is credited by the SSC in the PNL of that year, right? जिस साल में PNL के क्रेडिट में वो चला गया, उस साल में आपको करना है उसको टैक्सेबल करना है, या फिर जिस साल में वो एक्चुअल में रिसीव हुआ, राइट? आई होप दिस इज क्लियर. So these two sections are not very important, but you might get a small part of these provisions in the larger questions of PGBP. That's why remembering the provisions are very important, right? If you find this video helpful, then please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, The Witty Turtle, and also don't forget to share this video with your CA and CMA final and inter friends so that everybody will be benefited by this.